Welcome, everybody. So we were supposed to have 3 papers here. One of those, one person had to back out on us. So we have 2 papers. So we have 2 papers, and I believe an hour 90 minutes. So if I have that right, so that means there's a little bit extra time that we can take for questions and. One of the big important things about this venue is to read a paper and then have feedback, So we have a little more time for that, and to the 2 presenters, if you need to read a little slower or take a couple of extra minutes or pause and explain, you got a little more time. We're not quite as pressed. So with that in mind, the first paper this afternoon is by Dean Theophilos. Dean is a licensed mental health therapist and addiction counselor. For the past 10 years, he has worked in both Minnesota and Illinois, serving diverse populations, as well as children, adolescents, and adults. He specializes in the treatment of addiction and trauma. He has clinical experience in both Christian-based and secular treatment centers. And Dean is on the board of the Orthodox Christian Association of Medicine, Psychology, and Religion, so he and I see each other regularly on Zoom meetings. And has been a speaker multiple times at this annual conference. He's currently working at Northland Therapy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. He's a member of St. George Greek Orthodox Church, also in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Dean is married to his wife, Leanne.
Yes.
Leanne, who is also a mental health therapist. And they have 2 sons named Theo and Nehemiah. So, Dean, if you would come and share the title of your paper and then read that for us, and we will be delighted to hear that and then to interact with you when you're done.
Thank you, Father.
Welcome.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dean. I'm going to speak on the recovery of the loved ones, reflections and teachings on the healing process for families and friends of those struggling with addiction. And I'm going to write 3 words. Probably make it some bigger print, because I'll probably go back to these 3 words in my paper. So you can see that I will explain these 3 words as I talk today.
Did you say the 3 words for the recording?
Oh, yes. Cause, control, and cure. As an addiction professional, I work not just with the addicted person, but also with the families of that individual. In many ways, the families and the addicted person have parallel journeys to recovery. The fear, anger, hopelessness, and confusion that manifest through the struggle of addiction are also seen through the family and friends who are victims of the addiction's insidious, destructive powers. Sadly, the world of addiction treatment is daunting. There are numerous factors that families and friends must consider when confronting addiction. Many different theories and approaches offer perspectives on what should be done to ensure that the family and the individual struggling can heal. However, families often face conflicting views and strategies in dealing with addiction, in addition to internal divisions within the family, where members, including the addicted person, disagree on how to address the addiction problem. Among the myriad of opinions, approaches, and theories, there's a particular teaching from the recovery support group Al-Anon that I have found to offer powerful insights. Al-Anon, an offshoot group of Alcoholics Anonymous, the famous support group dedicated to helping those with alcoholism, was created specifically for family and friends of alcoholics. Al-Anon's teachings are mostly the same as AA's. Still, they offer some unique ideas that apply only to the family and friends to help them navigate the complex realities of addiction and help them grow individually. Furthermore, I have found that understanding these concepts of Al-Anon can help family and friends connect with the spiritual teachings of the Orthodox Church. In my time, I've counseled both Christian families and Orthodox families, and I've seen major parallels with these 2 teachings. In this paper, I will briefly discuss and reflect upon the teachings of Al-Anon and how they can relate to modern theories of addiction treatment, family therapy, and Orthodox spiritual teachings. Al-Anon and AA are known for their slogans, used at meetings and gatherings as reminders to help the individual recover. At first glance, most of these slogans appear as nothing but pithy platitudes. But as one works through the Al-Anon program, these concepts from the sayings begin to reveal a deeper meaning. One of the slogans is called the 3 C's and proclaims that in the recovery journey of family and friends, they must remember they did not cause the addiction, first C. They cannot control the addiction, second C. And they cannot cure the addiction, third C. It is this principle that I will reflect upon as it can be a powerful guiding tool. The first C claims that one did not cause the addiction. Al-Anon teaches about the struggle to understand responsibility as one of the significant obstacles to growing and healing. The desire to figure out who is to blame or what is the cause of the tremendous addiction is an instinct. However, this drive can lead to more heartache and pain, and feelings of pervasive guilt will most likely arise. Al-Anon teaches the concept of not causing the addiction so families do not become overly tied down by focusing on who is the guilty party. A family member can become flooded with guilt and shame, which can block the person from enacting meaningful change in their life. Al-Anon points out that in dysfunctional family systems where there's addiction, the addicted person will accuse other family members of making them want to use. Blame and guilt continue the addictive cycle of destruction, yet overcoming this obstacle is particularly complex. One can look at modern-day concepts of addiction to understand this idea more. The biological, psychological, and social model of addiction has been designed to offer a holistic understanding of how addiction can be treated. The model affirms that substances have physiological and neurological effects that become habit-forming. These effects include, but are not limited to, how certain neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine, become dysregulated, and how different bodies absorb substances in the bloodstream. The biology of heredity is also acknowledged, as it has been studied that specific genes can attribute to the development of addiction. However, the model also recognizes the importance of environment and environmental and emotional factors that develop addictive behaviors. It supports studies that show that a person's experience of abuse, stress, poverty, and peer pressure can lead to habitually abusing substances. There is also the matter of comorbidity of mental health disorders, with reports showing that 50% of people with severe mental health disorder have struggled with substance abuse or addiction. This model can help affirm Al-Anon's teaching that one did not cause the addiction, since reducing addiction to any one issue prevents healing. Reducing addiction to any one issue prevents healing. Whether it is a family member blaming the addicted person for all the difficulties, or the addicted person blaming the family for the addiction, reducing substance use disorders to a singular source negates the healing process, since healing involves the biological, the psychological, and the sociological. Primary addiction treatment modalities in the world today emphasize that it is counterproductive to recovery to accuse the addicted person of not getting better. Instead, understanding that the addiction manifested through a convergence of multiple factors provides more avenues for growth. The Orthodox spiritual tradition can resonate with Al-Anon's teaching of not causing addiction, as this concept is connected with the ascetical mindset of humility taught by the Orthodox monastics. When reading the collective teachings of the Desert Fathers, there is an ongoing theme of not demanding God to reveal his will. Monks are tempted to want to know God's theodicy, or why evil and suffering exists, but that desire can lead one astray in their spiritual walk. In the famous account of St. Anthony, he converses with God. The report writes that when the same Abba Anthony thought about the depths, the judgment of God, he asked, Lord, how is it that some die when they are young, while others drag on to extreme old age? Why are there those who are poor and those who are rich? Why do wicked men prosper, and why are the just in need? He heard a voice answering him, Anthony, keep your attention on yourself. These things are according to the judgment of God. It is not your advantage to know anything about them. This interaction with St. Anthony and God highlights the spiritual mindset of focusing on oneself to bring more spiritual healing. Orthodox ascetical practices emphasize that one's spiritual walk should be oriented on oneself in such a radical manner that one focuses solely on one's transformation through God. Despite witnessing tremendous suffering around the individual, which I must add, in addiction, we see tremendous, horrific suffering. Tears beyond tears. Despite witnessing that, the spiritual energy must be concentrated on the individual's work. This is the same for the family of the addicted person. The more they can work through their struggles and sins instead of fixating on finding the primary reason for addiction, the more they can heal. Focusing on one's spiritual journey is vital since it can bring about God's healing. So the family must not be stuck into concerns about who is to blame, but rather orient themselves towards their healing with God. The second C. The second C of Al-Anon, that one cannot control the addiction, addresses what it means to enact meaningful change for a family in recovery. When one works the Al-Anon program, one begins the program by stating that they are powerless over the addiction and that their lives have become unmanageable. This requires that family members let go of trying to manage the life of the addicted person. In the family's attempt to help the addicted person find recovery or stop their behaviors from getting worse, their own lives become chaotic. The family needs to learn that they are powerless against the addiction, and they must let go of trying to stop it. Family members begin a radical transformation of how they relate and interact with a loved one struggling. Family psychological theories can help understand the nuances and levels of change the family must undergo to surrender and begin a better relationship with the recovering person. In family therapy, there's a theory that each family system exists in homeostasis. Homeostasis, a state of equilibrium or balance that keeps the family functioning. The complicated reality of homeostasis is that although families have this structure that allows each member to function within the system, it does not imply the homeostatic system is healthy. Patterns directly connected to family dysfunction may negatively affect family members struggling with addiction. During family therapy, the family must strive towards shifting these dysfunctional patterns to help heal their lives and offer the best support for the family members struggling. This work can be exceptionally arduous since habits can be ingrained in the family for decades, and changing those patterns may appear as if the family member is changing their entire lives. I will add just one point to this with the time we have. It's amazing to see when families start this journey how it's like night and day. Like they didn't realize the layers of which there's functional family systems have played a part in affecting addiction getting worse or have stopped them from growing. And it almost feels like we're opening another world. Fathers, mothers have told me that. Like, I didn't know this world existed. I have to enter in this world now. And it's like, yeah, because the healing lies there. So, yet, those great acts of change involve letting go of control, which is part of the Al-Anon process. Each family member can learn the radical act of letting go of old ways of interacting with others and replacing them with new, more impactful ways. At times, it will be an act of surrender in which family members give up on behaviors they may have considered for years as accurate ways to love and support each other. By letting go of control, they shift the family system, allowing new ways to heal and grow. Some families need to engage less. Some families need to engage more. And I would add, you don't know right away. Families kind of walk in and they ask, like, okay, what do we do now? Do I engage more? More on Tuesday, less on Wednesday? More for September, less for December? My answer to them is that I don't know yet. We need to wait. Healing takes time. And this structural change the family has to go through is going to be nuanced, but also beautiful at the same time. Each family will have its version of letting go of control, since each system has its unique homeostasis. The Orthodox spiritual tradition is attuned to the significance of letting go of control for spiritual healing, primarily through the radical spiritual act of continually overcoming one's self-centeredness and egoism to move closer to the love of God. To find spiritual freedom in the Orthodox ascetical tradition is to surrender all of one's thoughts, beliefs, actions to God, which involves ongoing scrutiny into whether the most mundane or small step may be a behavior of one's own ego and not of closer connection with God. I'll add one more piece of that. A lovely book that I did not mention, I'll probably mention the longer version of this paper, is The Way of the Ascetics by Tito Corleander. It's a short little book. And he comes at it from a layperson perspective, and he says it starts with how many cups of coffee you have in the morning. Did you have 2 cups of coffee, or did you have 1 cup of coffee? And he said that small act of 1 or 2 cups of coffee in the morning may be that act of changing your orientation towards God. Again, it seems trivial, but there's the level of degrees of change, the degrees of humility that come through our walk with God. To be transformed through him involves that level of investigation into our lives. The Orthodox ascetical tradition parallels the difficult work of a family in recovery. The family's journey is one of surrendering their perceived notions of what it means to have relationships with the ones they love, so the family can find more profound ways to love each other. The final C, the third C, that one cannot cure the addiction, appears initially only as an extension of the second. Yet, the Al-Anon belief that family members cannot cure their loved one's addiction provides the most significant meaning to the family's lives. Al-Anon teaches that while one cannot fix the addiction of the loved one, they can cure themselves, meaning that there can be a radical change of how the family members view the loved one's addiction, their relationship with the person, and themselves. This radical change requires looking at addiction on the biological, psychological, and sociological levels. It involves making significant shifts in relationship dynamics within the family so the family can learn how to love the addicted person better. And most importantly, it entails a more profound transformation within each family member. The family members must go into themselves and work on their own emotional and behavioral issues, which can alter their perspectives on the struggles caused by the addiction. The family members can work on their anger, sadness, resentment, and grief and discover new ways to heal issues that may have been going on far before the loved one struggled. One of the beautiful testaments of my work with family members is that they realized, wow, I've got to work on things that went on in my childhood before I even had a kid or before I met this person. And I healed those ways. I didn't think that was possible. So those degrees of change can transpire as they go on their own journey of healing. Al-Anon upholds the belief that an individual who works on changing their personal life can positively affect another person's life, even if they hardly interact. I'll make another story. Many family members don't even see their loved ones. And they don't even interact for years. And this is a story of a father and his children, and they were living cross continents, Europe, and then the kids were in America. And he didn't know what to do. Well, he worked on himself the story goes 5-10 years, but he worked on himself for multiple years, not seeing his children once, and they were struggling with their addiction. He wasn't had addiction issues, the kids did. But in that transformation, he comes back to see them in a whole new attitude. His whole mindset, his whole being changed. And that brought more ways of healing. So even if you're 100,000 miles away from your loved one, if you're working on yourself, healing your issues, healing the passions, you can still make a change because you're embodying more healing that can still impart to the loved one. This idea may appear somewhat far-fetched, but has significant parallels to the Orthodox spiritual teachings. The Russian saint, Saint Seraphim of Sarab, said, "Acquire the spirit of peace, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved. Acquiring the spirit of peace is an ongoing ascetical act of dealing with the internal passions and sins and reorienting oneself towards God, living a humble life. It means surrendering to God's will to live in greater love with others instead of living a life driven by our selfish needs and desires. It is a profound transformation at the heart of Orthodox understanding of repentance. A 180-degree turn of one's life direction away from sinful existence and towards Christ and union with Him. The difficulty of repentance that is all-consuming and requires the person to look at all aspects of their life. But when that internal transformation occurs, the world around the person changes. Orthodox spiritual tradition preaches that the more a person gains inner union with God, the more people around them can change. Love and grace are spread through one person living a new life of health and happiness through Christ. The family that goes through recovery walks a similar path to the spiritual act of repentance, where they experience an internal transformation of heart and soul that brings forth healing and life-giving effects for those around them, including the addicted person. And I add before that point, this internal transformation does not imply that the family members don't do actions still toward the person who's struggling. Actions will take place. There will be engagement. There are times the family will have to set boundaries. There are times the family will have to engage the addicted person. That being said, this pendulum going too far to the extreme, if you do these 5 things, these 5 actions toward the loved one, it's all good, it's missing the mark. It's not the full swing. That there's going to be a balance or a weaving, a mixture of what actions do I have to do to engage in a more meaningful, loving way with the addicted person, and what actions do I do internally. There's going to be a weaving balance. What that is, as I've kind of echoed in this paper, is suspect to the journey. It's the individual journey. It's predicated on that. Which leads to my conclusion. Each family's journey of recovery is unique. Each family's journey of recovery is unique. As an addiction professional, I strongly advocate that no family or addicted person should be forced into choosing a healing path, even if a particular plan can show benefits.
Say it again.
No family should be forced into a healing path. And frankly, in my time and experience, I've seen addiction professionals and treatment facilities do that. Co-opting, manipulating, and misleading family members into thinking, well, if you do our program, or if you take the loved one here, snap, magic wand, we're all good. I find that atrocious. Doesn't mean there aren't healing modalities and there aren't healing methods. Again, if you wanted to, I could show you the research that's done on treatment facilities across the United States of America. But that is also an insidious trap. Addiction, again, is a scary and complex process that requires professionals to listen to the individual story of each family and try to understand how their story can find hope and healing. What has been so helpful in my practice of using the 3 C's to counsel and support the families is that its emphasis on the healing power of humility. To be humble in the face of tremendous suffering is not easy. I will have to say that again one more time. Actually, if it get anything from me today, maybe that line right there. It is to be humble in the face of tremendous suffering is not easy. It is not. I pray every day that I can remain humble in the face of the suffering that I see. I have to think likewise for the people who are experiencing this. It's not easy. That is why many beliefs and systems proclaim solutions to complex problems such as addiction that are only reductionistic answers that never provide a space for complete healing. When healing is total, that totality holds the intricacies, the layers of the problem. When the family first begins the process of family therapy, I often tell them that although it appears as if there is no answer to their current fears and pain, there will be a resolution. and it will appear in ways they least expect. It will appear in ways they least expect. This understanding of healing echoes the church's teachings on the cross. When we see Christ crucified, we also see his glorious resurrection. We see the depths of despair that come with the crucifixion, leading to the conquering of death and the utter joy that comes from that victory. From an Orthodox Christian lens, healing involves holding this tension of the crucifixion and resurrection. That suffering is connected to salvation. The hope is that the families can experience the joy and ecstasy of healing seen through the cross of our Lord and Savior as they go on their recovery journey. Thank you. Okay, we got my time, right? Yeah.
Questions, feedback?
Yeah, I could talk a little more on anything. So.
Yeah, I have a question. Really great, Dean. Thank you for all of your thoughts, reflections, and wisdom. When you're implementing the Al-Anon model, right, of helping people let go, basically, right, let go of control and all of that, and 3 C's. Like you said, along the way, there are opportunities maybe to be honest with the person, right, which still involves letting go, right, but in a way it might be like gently confronting them in some way, right, or telling them how much you love them, or maybe, I don't know, I want to hear more of your wisdom on what types of stuff people say that's effective while letting go, but engaging.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a good, and this is, I think, the point where I think there are so many things to talk about. I think your question is, I think, a primary one, because to understand that interaction between engaging, being an act of letting go. So I'll go hard and fast right now, is that when you're in abusive relationships, letting go of control is letting go of the abuse's hold on you. Is finding freedom from the abuse. So for a period of time, I'll go personal. I worked at a women's prison ministry. And a big problem was that a lot of the women in the women's prison movement, had experienced, horrific domestic abuse and abusive relationships. And there were groups we focused on the reality of finding freedom from those abusive relationship dynamics that had caused so much suffering in their lives. That even the act of standing up and saying, hey, this is how you hurt me, or saying no, the act of saying, no, I'm not going to do this, was an act of letting go of control, because you were letting go from the grip of that abusive relationship had upon you. And it's, again, at some glance, it could appear counterintuitive, or just like, why would that be aligned to that? But if you think about relationships being so intricate and all-consuming in that way, like a relationship can become an entity that just envelops you, swallows you whole, and you're weirdly kind of you're latched on in a way that you have to let go of that hold, almost like a two-way hold it has upon you. To let go from that and say, hey, I'm going to engage, and I am going to stop this cycle from continuing. And for some people, and I'll go one for more children with parents who are alcoholics. It'd be very hard to kind of show a child to say, hey, you can say no to your father, or you can say no to your mother. That would, for them, be like letting go of control, because they're parents of their lives. My mom and dad raised me since I was a little kid. I don't know anything else. So you're telling me that I have to set a boundary towards mom? She's the only person who raised me. That'd be by letting go of my world. If I told my mother, I'm sorry, I can't engage with this right now. So if you kind of view it as if letting go of control is to end abusive cycles, it's like letting go of that world they were in that stopped them from sharing and stopped them from speaking their voice. If that makes sense. Could not make sense. But
Sure. Wait, can you just explain that last point again? Because I was with you 90%.
Sure.
Until the 10% at the end.
yeah, so the idea would be is that when you set a boundary towards a family member you care about, it's like letting go of that old world.
Yeah.
So I'll use the example. So if I'm raised by my mother since I was a baby, she's my life. That's all I knew. Mom and me. Say I'm only son, single mother. She washed me, bathed me, sunrises, sunsets, only her. But through the years, since I was a baby, she's been drinking and using, and now she's doing heroin, and like the house is disarray, and I don't even want to be picked up from school from her because I don't know if she's going to kill herself or me by driving under the influence. Telling to that mother, hey, I need to speak up and share, hey, Mom, you're hurting yourself and this family by your using, would be like letting go of control of that old world where she was everything to me.
Yeah.
Same with the abusive relationships. Well, my boyfriend and I, we've been through everything together. Or my husband and I. He got me out of difficult times. We've had the past 20 years together in our marriage. He's my life. And I got to tell him, hey, if you keep drinking, I got to leave the house. That would be like letting go of a part of my life. Does that maybe
Yeah,
I hit that home with?
Yeah.
Oh, can we go down this path? Is that okay? Yeah, or we can go anywhere. Yeah.
I appreciated the paper and the way you structured it around these three C's. I had a question about control specifically, because one way that people who struggle with addictions control things is by lying, by deception. And I wonder how you think about that, given that lying impacts the kind of most basic elements of a relationship, like trust, and how you engage with that specific kind of control, as opposed to other means of kind of controlling their.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, of course, I hear that question. There's like a deeper layers to that question, but I always kind of start with what I've kind of learned in kind of, relapse prevention and family Al-Anon teachings on this, is that your actions speak louder than your words. So a lot of families come in, and the first thing on their mind is like, well, the trust has been broken. My son, my daughter has been using, and they've sneaking out, and they've taken thousands of dollars, and they've wrecked 2 cars. Or my husband has 50 WI, he has lost my trust. And they're really big on the trust thing, and this is an interesting angle I kind of go. I was like, yes, the trust is already gone. It is gone a long time ago. Like, we can grieve over that, but that trust crashed and burned probably decades before, years before we had this conversation. How we're going to regain that trust is through your actions. If you want to speak truth, because that's what addiction does, addiction lies and manipulates and conceals, that you start by living action. Your actions are going to speak forth truth. So that cliche word, your actions speak louder than your words, has more layers, because when you start living a healthier life and showing your family, I'm living a healthy life, I've even told families, you don't need to talk right now. Some families walk in, they're so angry that they don't even want a family session. I'm like, great, we don't need it right now. Let's work on our own selves right now. Let's have the loved one get 30, 60, 90, 6 months, 3 months of sobriety, so they can show through their behavior, their way of being, that we're ready to find what deeper truth is. So that, and again, and very classic with when I used to do this with more adolescents and teens, that's where we create like a behavioral plan, which they're all fine. Behavioral plans are good. Where we really emphasis on with families, it's like, we just got to stick with, what actions can the person do now to show that there's some movement going forward. So, but that deeper question about lying and control is that, truth, let's make truth go deeper than just our words. Let's speak truth through our bodies. Let's speak truth through our way of being. Let me live a new way. Sometimes I would hold opinion, if I get kind of deeper with this question, is that I can speak truth to you or anyone by just the way I am, my presence. I go back to St. Seraphim of Sarab's quote, find the spirit of peace. Didn't say, Seraphim, stop lying and be honest and speak honesty for the next 20 days in the spirit of peace. It says, acquire an internal spirit of peace. Your truth will be transferred through your being, through your body. It's my deeper question to you. Thank you. If we can go, yeah.
I guess I was going to ask, I know that different groups, different practitioners kind of, some really maybe emphasize, hey, let's drill down and kind of try to find the source of this addiction for you, because maybe we can do behavior modification, but we can do that for, a certain length of time. But at some point, these issues, like you mentioned, these issues that pre-exist, the addiction, they're going to come back in some form or another. And then others really say, look, that's great, that's dandy, but you can talk about your emotional state. You can talk about how you're feeling, till the cows come home, well, you're still going to be addicted, so you have to focus on that physical. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's got to be some blend.
Yes.
But I guess I wonder, could you kind of speak to that, that sort of that debate, that tension?
Yeah, and this is the other one, probably working off of the initial quote about the layers of these 3 C's and why I used it, because I think. So I hope it doesn't come up. I'm reading what I just said, but it doesn't mean in the journey that we don't look at causes. Like actually, the bigger thing, and I've now worked. So this story I like telling because it's from my first experience as an intern. I went to an adolescent facility, and so it was an adolescent facility. It was a very nice adolescent facility, like top notch. Pay a lot of money to go there, and these family members, for all good reasons, they want to go to the top notch facility in the country, and they have family day. And these parents come in across the country, across the world, and they meet our leading psychologist on staff. I mean, he was a big deal. And the families come down, and I'm observing. I'm an intern, so I'm just watching this. So the families sit down. They're like, okay, what is it? Where's the good stuff? We're paying umpty dollar. I mean, insurance was taken, but they're still paying a pretty penny for this. And the psychologist was like, okay, if you want to figure out how to do this, figure out all your problems, I want you all to start going to therapy. That was his first lecture, and the tenor in the room sank. The parents were like asking them to like climb Mount Everest with like a 10,000 pound boulder on their back. So I tell the story of like, because he said like, when you do individual therapy and you go inward, because he said every parent should be doing in their own therapy, should be doing in-depth therapy on their own internal lives, because you're going to look at sources when you go there. Like you're never going to look at sources, but in that process, you're going inward. You're working on themselves. What happens with the cause problem, finding sources, that becomes weaponized. Well, I've done therapy now for 5 years, and I found out that you've been the jerkwad of my entire life. Well, that shouldn't be what the transformation is. But that's what happens. Because the other reality is, and this is the more darker message to this, is that abuse has occurred. I mean, parents abuse their children. Sexual abuse, physical abuse happens. And to say that physical and sexual abuse doesn't lead to addiction transferring is not accurate. That being said, to fixate on that can become a trap. Doesn't mean we don't look at the pain. And so I want to stress this too. The journey of looking at abuse. So when I deal with families of addiction issues plus abuse issues, that path is going to be different than healing. So I made the other point too. So let's say that this is the more harder conversation about cause. So I'll be very emphatic about this because this one's kind of important. So when I have a family that has physical or sexual abuse, that a father or parent has sexually or physically abused the kid, and that abuse has led to the addiction, by all means, we're going to find a pathway to deal with that. That would be silly and incompetent not to. That being said, I make this analogy. We want to deal with this sober or deal with this while we're actively using heroin. Because I'll tell you, we have a family session about the fact that father's physical abuse caused the heroin addiction to the daughter, and she's still shooting up before the session. Guess what? That's not a healthy session. That's not going to be a healthy session. Do we still address the fact? Because I have had families that address the father physically abused a daughter, beat her a lot, and that beating led to her heroin use. But again, we're going to get anything out of that session if the daughter shut up minutes before the session started? No. She'll be high, strung out. And frankly, if we get trauma theory going, if we had sessions like that to look at how abuse played into the action of it, we're going to re-trigger the trauma and trigger the use. And then now I'm afraid that we're going to talk about this. She's going to shoot up and then die. So it's not that we don't look at causes. I will repeat it. Not that we don't look at causes, but there has to be a kind of 2-lane highway going on right now, where that has to be in tandem with sobriety or some sort of behavioral change. Because those deeper causes aren't going to happen.
Right.
So, thank you.
No, thank you.
I was going to ask a question about what you said earlier with the example of the child and confronting the mother, let's say,
Yes.
as an example, and the way that what I understood was that when the child confronts the parent, they are letting go of control over what they understand that relationship is, or something like that.
Yes.
So my question is, for the person to be able to let go of that control, is there a readiness that they have to first get to? And is there a grieving that they have to process also? And I was hoping you might be able to share your thoughts about that,
Yeah.
based on your experiences.
Yeah. In some ways, to echo that word you just used, grieving, some have described family therapy process with this as the journey of grief, because you are grieving layers of what was. I kind of go back to, especially in family systems, these are the people you were raised with. So it would be unbelievably hard to know that, well, this was the mother who wiped my tears when I was crying at 5 years old, or this is the mother who held my hand when I couldn't go to bed at night. And to tell that mother who did those tender, loving things to me that things are not good, we got to change, is unbelievably scary and sad. So in many ways, every process of healing and shifting is going to be grieving, because you're going to grieve things that were lost. This is what's so sadly intricate, and somewhat how addiction is so insidious, is because it takes beautiful things. Like, a lot of times families don't realize that, well, I love this person so much. Why are there can't be issues right now. This is my yaya. This is my, this is my baba. This is my mama. These are people who I've lived my life. My cousin, my wife, the person I got married to. You mean we got to talk about the sad things? And you got to work with the love you have for the person, with also the reality that there has sickness as it manifested, has occurred. Now, I think the one caveat to that would be mindful about, when setting boundaries, I think sometimes is a big piece of this, is that if there's active major issues going on right now. So if there's like active using in the household, people still living there, or things are so kind of really, the severity so blatant right now, it'd be like, I know this is hard, but we have to be finding ways to make sure safety is also maintained too. Like, it'd be one thing if we were living separately, or other dynamic, or they're in treatment where we had to take time to figure this out. But if if there's someone actively using heroin in the household and there's kids and driving, I'd have to well, we got to find some boundaries right now, or else the safety of the families could be jeopardized. But thank you for that question.
One more, please.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. It's really moving to me. So one piece of my becoming a better father with a son who's depressed and suicidal is abandoning all of my old modes of behavior, and also working on myself. That really resonated. But a piece of the puzzle I haven't quite solved is that in my journey, the presence of God is still producing thought patterns and desired behaviors. He's a confirmed atheist, and he despises religion. And maybe you could speak to how you would, generally address something like that in terms of how I can improve my communication as a parent, not project my religious beliefs and patterns of thought. I just have this notion of
course, amen.
Hope coming from that, and it's just not working.
I want to, in these spiritual questions, I always want to default back, like Father Sean, always have a spiritual advice on this. But what I've heard from people like Father Sean and other spiritual people in my life, spiritual fathers and teachers and priests, is I'm thinking about the prodigal son. I'm thinking about what was kind of mentioned even in your sermon today, of like the lost son, of that the father's faithfulness to the son, knowing that the son, there will be the embrace that will come back. Again, I don't know what that's going to look like, but there will be an embrace coming back. Like that hope, which is the Christian hope, I believe that we all have, is present. That it is. I don't buy the malarkey. That's a cliche statement. That is a powerful thing. If we believe that transformation can occur on levels that aren't just rational, or that you say 5 things and your son will believe in God, is not true. If you can embody the Christian hope, by the hope that when he does come back, you will embrace him and cloak him and gown him with the garments and have the celebrational feast. And how do you embody that inside of yourself is very powerful. One quote from a saint that I saw actually recently, I was going to put it in my paper, but it was kind of like, it was over a couple weeks ago, was, I believe it was St. Porphyrios. Parents asked, well, what's good parenting? What's kind of the ideal parenting scenario? It could have been St. Porphyrios or St. Sophrony. Forgive me, I don't know the exact quote, but he said the best thing to do is radiate joy. It's to radiate joy. That the minute you see him, even though he is in his own tension and turmoil, you bring forth just joy, a joyous life, and radiate them. That will transform him. And now I'll go personally to one story I heard a story about this. It's about family change, but I'll go from another story. It's kind of, I've seen this weave into, it's an Al-Anon story, but I've actually seen it happen in families in recovery. So the story goes like this. The husband goes to the Al-Anon meeting, and he goes to a meeting, and his wife has the addiction issues, and there's family turmoil. She's took the kids away from him and actually kind of manipulated the kids to kind of dislike him. So he lost everything. He lost the house, kicked out. The wife still has active addiction. Both his children, who are like teenagers, early 20s, all can't stand him. And he's like, what do I do? And he's like, I just have no belief that anything's gonna get better. And the amazing story is that, he comes to the meeting despaired, but then the story goes, 15 years later, he's walking both his daughters down the aisle, and they both love him dearly. But if you asked him in the moment, would that ever happen? He'd say no. He'd say no. My children hated me. My wife and I are over. But then he gets to walk down the aisle with his 2 daughters 15 years later. It's kind of like our perspective of reality is so small that although things seem truly horrific, that Locke said, there's no possible way my family would ever have loved me. But now I'm celebrating my 2 daughters' weddings, and that we're all in joyful love. It's a bit of a reminder that there is something larger going on here, that our lives are not just our lives in the larger hands of a creator. So I leave with that. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dean. And obviously, yes, please.
Yes.